With a
First at 4 starts right now.
You're watching Philadelphia's NBC10.
Serving Pennsylvania,
New Jersey,
and Delaware. Now live. This is News
10 first at 4.
If he accepts them, force will not be necessary. If he refuses or continues to evade his obligations through more tactics of delay and deception, he and he alone will be to blame for the consequences.
President Clinton delivers an ultimatum to Saddam Hussein. Open your weapons sights or face severe military action. Good afternoon. I'm Renee Chenault.
And I'm Larry Menti. Our top story on News 10 first at 4. The U.S. inches closer to another showdown with Saddam. Today, President Clinton outlined just what's at stake should the U.S. mount a strike against Iraq and what's at stake if the U.S. does nothing. Here is the very latest. The president calls on Americans to support an attack on Iraq unless Saddam bows to U.S. demands on weapons inspections. Iraq, meantime, pledged to make a serious effort to resolve the crisis, but stopped short of allowing unrestricted inspections. All this as more U.S. ground troops head towards the Persian Gulf, should military action become the only option.
And we still have, God willing, a chance to find a diplomatic resolution of this.
After a full briefing at the Pentagon this morning, President Clinton took his case for a possible military case directly to the American people. At issue, Iraq's continued noncompliance with the UN resolution for Iraq to open all its weapons sites to UN inspection teams.
It is obvious that there is an attempt here, based on the whole history of this operation since 1991, to protect whatever remains of his capacity to produce weapons of mass destruction.
The president is putting some bite behind his bark and sending up to 6,000 more troops to the Persian Gulf. U.S. and British forces are continuing full military maneuvers in preparation.
There's a job of work to be done here. We are not talking about compromises. There are no compromises between what is right and what is wrong.
The UN Secretary General Kofi Annan is now lobbying members of the UN Security Council to let him personally go to Baghdad and try and negotiate an end to the crisis. A statement released by the Iraqi government says it welcomes Annan and will try to make his visit a successful one. Iraqi Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz says he's gained support from several Arab states denouncing a military solution and says any military strike would undermine security in the whole region. Iraqi people, meantime, are lining up in long lines for food rations as Baghdad prepares for possible airstrikes. Still, the will of the Iraqi people appears unshaken. And we will have a live update from Washington on the very latest in the showdown with Saddam coming up in just a few minutes on News 10 first at 4.
Another midweek storm is causing some problems at the Jersey Shore today. Once again, fragile beaches and beachfront homes are in harm's way. The storm is also bringing wind and rain to the Philadelphia area this afternoon. News 10 and media, where umbrellas and headlights are the order of the day. Now the question is, how long will this storm stick around? Let's get the very latest from John Belaris and Earthwatch on this latest storm. John.
Well, Renee, I actually have some good news with this one. The storm is continuing to weaken a little bit, and the gusty winds right now being felt down the shore will be diminishing by 7 o'clock, so the shore escaped the bullet with this one, and that's some great news. And the rain as well will be moving away next couple of hours. Let's check out the radar, and you can see the back edge now actually through southern Jersey, D.C. The heaviest rain is just about to move out, so that is some good news. So the heaviest rain ending within the next hour or two, along with the diminishing wind. We have a gale warning still flying down the shore, but that wind will be diminishing by 7 o'clock. Winds are gusting to 30 to 40, and this is what we're anticipating at times of high tide tonight down the shore at 11:37, between 11:37 and midnight. Minor coastal flooding. Minor. This is not a real hard hit for the shore, so we got a little lucky with this one, Larry.
Well, that is good news, but even with this small blast, the winter storm spelled some more trouble for the already battered Jersey Shore.
Let's check in with News 10's Paul Jackson live in Ventnor with the very latest. Paul.
Belaris said they were gusting at 30 to 40. I want to see a guy fly here. They're really, winds are picking up at the shore a bit, but So far, other than high tide has come and gone, and no, it's been pretty uneventful, no severe consequences. Just high winds, most of the problem. We're at the low end of the lunar cycle for the tides, so even without those protective dunes, homes were in no great danger. Residents of Ventnor spent an uneasy day waiting for the latest storm to hit. The mayor here predicting another round of heavy weather could bring the boardwalk tumbling down into the ocean. By late day, they realized this storm would not be a lion, but a pussycat.
It's just a normal wintertime storm. Probably get rain. He's talking about high winds, periods of heavy rain, maybe a thunderstorm or something like that. Hey, that happens all winter long. We're used to that.
Were you a little worried after the two big storms?
Well, the two in a row I was worried about, because three's a crowd, and you know everything happens in threes. Well, fortunately this isn't the week, but you know it's still wintertime.
Bill Melfi is Ventnor's emergency management coordinator. He says nature has been kind, naturally replenishing the beach with sand. However, the man-made dunes here, which protect homes, have not been rebuilt.
Historically, that's the way it operates here. It goes offshore, it lays offshore a little bit, and as the tides ease out, it comes back again. Although down the other end where we lost the dunes aren't going to get rebuilt automatically. I don't know where that sand's going to come from.
Right now, officials obviously lobbying for federal funds to help replace those protective dunes. Coming up at 5 o'clock, we'll take a look at Sea Isle City. We're live in Ventnor. Paul Jackson, News 10.
All right, Paul, I think actually you and John are on the same page. He said the winds will be diminishing, so just hang in there. It's going to get better.
Because right now I'm clear for takeoff.
All right, hang in there, hang in there.
Well, that's a tough thing. You're not exactly Pixan, you know what I mean? Thanks a lot, Paul. And stay here on News 10 for the very latest from Earthwatch.
In other news today, a bomb scare.
Well, the weather is wreaking havoc across the eastern third of the nation today. Many of you have been facing severe thunderstorms, even some tornadoes and flooding. Good afternoon. Welcome to WeatherScope. I'm Mike Bono. For more on this storm system, we turn to the forecast center now with Dan Atkinson.
Thank you, Mike. The storm we're keeping an eye on, of course, developed as a low-pressure area in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico on Sunday, and then it pounded the state of Florida for a couple of days. Fortunately, things are improving for you in the state of Florida, but this is a slow-moving storm system, quite strong, which for now is not producing much in the way of severe local storms, but it does continue to produce a lot of rain, and there's some flooding in the Toledo, Ohio area, and a lot of wind still associated with this low-pressure area. Let's take a look at the watches and warnings and advisories, which are the impact of this storm. Coastal flood advisories in effect along the coast of North Carolina, with a warning from Surf City, North Carolina to Cape Lookout. Also heavy surf advisories from Savannah, Georgia up to Cape Hatteras, and over a much broader area, gale warnings posted through this evening from Little River Inlet, North Carolina, on up toward Eastport, Maine. So quite a windy system. Winds have been gusting to above 35 miles per hour at JFK in New York, and not far from there, the Weather Channel's Bill Keneally is standing by at Long Beach, New York. Bill, what's happening there?
Dan, it's starting to blow pretty good out here. We have a northeast wind, and by the way, we're about, I'd say 12 miles or so, maybe 15 miles to the east of JFK Airport. Behind me is the Atlantic Ocean. We have the jetty set up here to break down the water coming in. But right now it's a northeast wind, so it tends to be pushing the water out rather than drawing it in. And looking all the way down the boardwalk, you can see not too many hardy souls out there today. It's pretty nasty. Temperature about 40 degrees here. Check out our mass cam now as we pan all the way down the boardwalk. And we're heading down towards in the direction of Coney Island, I'll say. But once again, it's a raw day out here, Dan. The tides will be the big concern later on tonight. And by the way, the high tide, as we look out over the Atlantic Ocean, is about 11:48 tonight, and then again 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. The concern would be the Reynolds Channel. A couple blocks inland from here, the water tends to kind of build up in there, then sort of flood the streets in this area. So that will be one of the concerns, and obviously the threat of heavy rain later on. Now the threat of rain is turning over to snow as you get far enough inland. And for the details on what's happening west of Boston, let's turn it to Jim Cantore. Jim?
Well, last time I was here in November of '96, standing right out here at the Beechwood Inn, which is where we are here in Worcester, Massachusetts, there was 3 feet of snow on the ground. So a whole different year this year, not much snow at all, at least to date, and you can thank a good old El Nino pattern for that. Here we are in Worcester, as I mentioned, kind of a nice area here in central Massachusetts, pretty big city, actually one of the biggest cities in Massachusetts, and we're looking at Route 9 heading east beyond, and of course heading east out of Worcester means you're heading into the Boston area. So it looks like tonight, with the precipitation holding off, it's going to be a dry rush hour for this area across interior New England. So great news there. Right now, as I look up in the sky, I can see the Virga coming down, which is precipitation not reaching the ground. So you got to think about that, folks. We got 7,000 to 8,000 feet of air we have to saturate before we get this stuff. Winter storm watches are posted. So far, so good. Back to you, Dan.
And thank you, Jim. We'll check back. We're joined here in the Forecast Center by Buzz Bernard. Buzz, one of our senior meteorologists here at the Weather Channel. And Buzz, one of the distinctive things about this system is it is an unseasonably mild storm for now, isn't it?
Just a little bit of cold air left way up in northern New England, and perhaps just enough to get that snow or ice to begin there in the Worcester area. Jim mentioned he could see the precipitation falling out of the clouds above him and evaporating before it gets down to the ground. We see a lot of precipitation moving up through the state of Connecticut now, but it's having to fight very dry air at the surface, so not quite hitting the ground yet, although Danbury, Connecticut does report a mixture of sleet and snow right now, temperature 36 degrees there.
Well, this system has produced a lot of rain, and in fact at this hour there are flood warnings in effect for 15 counties in northeast Florida, 6 counties around Toledo, Ohio. Some low-lying areas and basements are flooded in the Toledo area. What's the focus of this sprawling system?
Well, you're right, it is sprawling, and I guess the focus tonight will be the winds on the mid-Atlantic coast moving up into the area of Long Island Sound and southern New England, and along with that, of course, high tide and the threat of some minor coastal flooding.
Now, the low-pressure area for now is centered back over western Tennessee, but it will, over the next 24 hours, apparently be reorganizing closer to the coast, won't it?
It will, and we can see a nice spin in the atmosphere here, giving you some idea of the reach of this thing. Showers down here in southern Florida, and if we could see it, we could see a mixture of rain and snow back in the upper Midwest. Here we see some of the scattered precipitation, a lot of dry air now working up through the eastern seaboard. That's taken away the threat of severe weather for the Carolinas. But here we see the rain moving up through D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, and on into the New York City area now.
And there's been moderate rain at times at Baltimore, BWI, and also reporting gusts of 40 miles per hour last hour.
A rather miserable afternoon.
And the potential is there for the wintry travel tomorrow morning, particularly in the Northeast, right?
As you get farther inland in New England, that's very true.
So factor in some extra travel time. Thanks a lot, Buzz. Okay. Buzz Bernard, senior meteorologist here with the Weather Channel. And if you want more information on this storm system or weather elsewhere around the country or around the world, join us at our Weather Channel online service, weather.com. And now we go back to the studio for the latest on the nation's weather and your forecast.
Well, if you're looking for winter weather, interestingly enough, you could find it in Southern California.
By the Vice President and Defense Secretary. In a nationally televised speech,